What is going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. Your guys, Derek and Cody, with you, bringing a preview of the second matchup between the Indianapolis Colts and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Of course, we had to bring our friend on to the show, UCF Jaguar. My friend, how you doing today?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Already another Colts matchup. It feels like we just played you guys last week.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, and the Colts too, I think, have the most divisional games already dealt with so far. This will be our fourth divisional game in just the first 6 weeks of the NFL season. So,
yeah, this is the earliest rematch of any two teams in the NFL so far.
Yep, absolutely. Well, and I mean, again, everyone knows the stakes of this, man. I mean, of course, Indy's coming into Jacksonville. Again, hasn't beaten Jacksonville inside of Jacksonville since 2014. All these years, man, all these opportunities where you thought Indianapolis should be winning, but of course it just doesn't happen. And that's what we're up against here again. Colts looking to break the curse. But since that first week where you guys faced us and won 31-21, how do you feel about Jacksonville since that week one win against Indy?
Yeah, it's been weird because a lot of us expected the offense to be like awesome and high shooting and our defenses to be kind of the ones that are lagging behind. But, really the defense has been extremely good. I mean, 4 out of the 5 games so far, it's just been really good defensive game planning. And it's not like the Jaguars even have all that many world beaters. I mean, Josh Allen has been playing really good this year in a contract year. Tyson Campbell is a really underrated cornerback. But outside of that, like it feels like the defense coordinator is getting a lot more out of this defense than really the personnel should indicate. But the offense has just been the one that's been weird because it was announced this year that Press Taylor will be the guy calling plays, and for some reason he just wants to run the ball like all the time. It'll be like 1st and 10 run, 2nd and 8 run, and we're at like 3rd and 6, and we're like, what are we doing here? So it's taking a little bit for the offense to get going. But last week against the Buffalo Bills, it finally seemed like there was some good rhythm and some good movement. Now, granted, Trevor Lawrence had a couple of fumbles that cost us, directly cost us some points because it was within the red zone, or at least close to the red zone. So, but the thing that was frustrating wasn't that the offense wasn't, doing good. It was more so that it's like, look, we have so many pieces. We have Trevor Lawrence, Calvin Ridley, ETN, Evan Ingram. How are we not like moving the ball better? But, for me, I think the Jaguars switched it up to finally where they said, look, we have Trevor Lawrence. Let Trevor cook. We don't need to be running the ball every time. So, yeah, I mean, as long as Trevor Lawrence, they can get him in a flow early on, I mean, the offense just moves better. But, yeah, they're still kind of trying to figure out who they are. But I believe in the personnel and offense, and that they'll be able to get going.
Awesome. Well, out of curiosity, because when we've met in the past, obviously the Indianapolis Colts had a Frank Reich, and we're just not able to get it done in Jacksonville. What's your opinion of the Colts this year? Because this is the team that you talk about overachieving. A lot of people have the Colts winning 3-4 games, and here they sit at 3-2. Tied for the division lead right now. I guess technically you guys have the lead, but same record as the Jaguars with a 3-2 record. Even with Gardner Minshew in this game, who obviously you guys know extremely well, what's your opinion of the Colts this year?
I mean, their Colts definitely surprised me. I mean, I definitely didn't expect them to be, 3-1 in games not against the Jaguars. And I think really the main thing is that I think, Shane Steichen appears to be a really good coach. I mean, the way he is able to, I mean, I was really impressed with week 1 with the way that, he called the game for Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson was young. He was raw. He had, some stuff that maybe they didn't feel comfortable with him doing yet. But, they called a really good offense for him. And it just felt like it flowed really well. Of course, later in the game when, they were down and, Richardson really needed to throw downfield, the Jaguars were able to kind of disguise some stuff and bait him into some, different bad throws. But, overall, I mean, I think Shane Steichen is, the story of the year for the, Colts. Now, it's unfortunate that Richardson got hurt. I mean, I know if you're asking me who I'd rather face on Sunday, whether it be Richardson or Gardner Minshew, I would definitely rather face Gardner Minshew just because I'm known as like the biggest Gardner Minshew hater amongst the Jags fan base. I just I fear the things that Anthony Richardson can do versus what Minshew can't do, because Anthony Richardson, the Jaguars faced it week 3. Like, we were like the come out party for CJ Stroud, and CJ Stroud just went there and threw it all over the place. And Anthony Richardson has that ability, man. Anthony Richardson has the ability to have over 100 rushing yards and 250 plus passing yards, and he can slice and dice a team. He can make all the runs, make all the throws, and all that stuff. But with Gardner Minshew, you're a little bit limited when it comes to what he can do as a passer. I mean, if you're able to condense the pocket on him, because he doesn't really like sticking in that pocket. At least he didn't when he was on the Jaguars. If you can force him to like throw outside the hash marks and just do stuff like that, you can have a really effective game plan against them. But I'm really curious as to what they do this weekend with the running back situation, because you just gave JT a lot of money, but Zach Moss just ran crazy last week. So I'll be interested to see how they, figure that out when it comes to running back, carry load. I imagine it probably starts to favor Jonathan Taylor a little bit more. And look, the defensive line with Grover Stewart, DeForest Buckner, and the whole entire Colts defense under Gus Bradley's system. It can be a tough defense to play against. I know last time, the Indianapolis defensive line worked our offensive line, and the Jaguars offensive line is still, a work in progress. And, potentially our best offensive lineman might be out on Sunday with Walker Little. So, yeah, I mean, overall, it's really impressive with what the Colts are doing. And, they have a chance this weekend, going into, after week 6, going into week 7, being all alone in first place in the AFC South, not a spot where a lot of people really predicted them to be at.
Yeah, I mean, again, the stakes are high, and this team can write a lot of different narratives. I mean, the Indianapolis Colts, if they were to win on Sunday, definitely would be one of the biggest storylines of the NFL that week for sure. You mentioned it. I mean, talking about the quarterback situation that Indianapolis has right now, I think what you're seeing now, though, is Gardner Minshew getting a little bit more comfortable. He came in, he played week 2 against the Houston Texans because Anthony Richardson went down with that concussion. The stats weren't great, but he did what he had to do to win the game. They were able to score a few points, and, all things considered, they won. And then he had to start against Baltimore. He had an average game at best, but ended up, getting the job done one way or another. And then this last week against Tennessee, I mean, we saw him come in, and then Gardner had one of the best halves that I think he might have ever had in the history of his career. I mean, he went 11 of 14 for 150 yards and should have had 2 touchdowns if it weren't for just a few things that didn't go his way. But, I mean, you're seeing Gardner Minshew really dig into the Shane Steichen system now and what he's able to provide. And then you talked about the running backs. Of course, Jonathan Taylor didn't get a lot of snaps last week because he's still coming back. They're not trying to rush him into it. So even this week, I wouldn't even say he's going to get the bulk. I would say he probably gets a dozen snaps, maybe a few more than that. But I'd still say Zach Moss is going to end up getting the majority because he's the hot hand right now. It's kind of hard to run away from that, literally. So, I mean, is that your biggest concern about Indianapolis going forward with this, because of the Colts being able to run the ball both with Jonathan and Zach Moss? Because, I mean, in years past, you guys have shut down our rushing attack, even with Jonathan Taylor. I mean, you go back to that, what was it, the 2021 season when we played you guys in that last game. I mean, Jonathan Taylor couldn't do anything. I mean, that was the year he was having that MVP season, and you guys made him look like he was a total terrible running back. So, how scared are you of their rushing attack?
Like, I'm really, when it comes to the rushing attack, I'm not, the Jaguars are actually pretty good against the run. So it's not necessarily defensively that's what I'm worried about. I'm more so worried about not being able to generate pass rush because, Gardner Minshew, while he may have his limitations, he's a very smart guy. Like, he'll be able to probably be a pretty good NFL coach one day. You can kind of see him kind of evolving into that, like, a really good like OC or maybe even head coach role, just because you can tell the guy is really savvy, in the game of football. So I fear if pass rush isn't able to get there and he's able to kind of distribute the ball around, and that's really my biggest worry. When it comes to run game, I'm sure Jaguars going into this game, they're going to be keying in on the run game. That's going to be the thing that they want to take away. So it's going to be up to probably Gardner Minshew, to be able to pass against the secondary for the Jaguars, who's actually been doing pretty good. But of course, Jonathan Taylor, if he's playing at his top level, it is hard to stop him. It's just, I don't know what kind of level we're going to be expecting. And I'm not sure if, the Colts are going to be in a situation where, if they find themselves down by, 3, 7 points, whatever, if they're going to feel comfortable with running the ball a lot as opposed to, trying to air it out and kind of get some points that way. So, I think it's all about game script coming into this game.
Yeah, I guess a follow-up with that because, the Colts offensive line, it feels like the last couple of years, they kind of were going into a little bit of a decline. Some of those top players that we were used to, Ryan Kelly, Quentin Nelson, some of those guys, they were really struggling. And it definitely seems like this year, kind of with Shane Steichen, the system he's brought in, the offensive line coach he's brought in, right now, Ryan Kelly's the best graded center in Pro Football Focus. And seems like the Colts are starting to get their mojo back a little bit. And they do have Bernard Ryman back in this game, who, is a pretty good, pretty solid left tackle. So how do you feel just about, you mentioned the pass rush, but just the trenches of the Indianapolis Colts offensive line, which has been one of the top units in the league, versus, a pretty good Jacksonville defensive line as well. Josh Allen, all those guys, Trayvon Walker, how do you feel about kind of that matchup? Because to me, it definitely seems like it's a strength versus strength kind of game here.
Yeah, I mean, I like it's just, the defensive line seems kind of inconsistent for the Jaguars. I mean, we're able to stop the run pretty well most weeks outside of that outlier game against Houston where just nothing was going good from offense, defense, and special teams. We just didn't show up that day. But outside of that, with the defensive line, it's like, we either have days where we're getting really good pass rush or like no pass rush. I mean, like Josh Allen in 2 games has recorded 3 sacks each. And outside of that, 0 sacks. Trayvon Walker, we're kind of, like a lot of frustration with the Jags fan base. And it's like, all Jags fans wanted Aiden Hutchinson and, Trent Baalke wants, measurables and traits. So he gets this big guy with long arms. And then you see we're struggling getting a pass rush and Aiden Hutchinson's out here leading the NFL in like pressures. So, Trayvon Walker's had a tough time getting going in the pass rush category, but, he's been pretty good in like run stopping. But yeah, with the Colts offensive line, I mean, yeah, it does feel like they're getting their mojo back. Ryan Kelly, really good center, and it's just tough because I don't know which Jaguar defensive line is going to really show up. So this one's kind of hard to predict in that manner.
Yeah, I mean, again, you go back to what happened in the first game. I mean, Calvin Ridley was basically the star of the show for you guys. The Indianapolis Colts, defensively from a secondary position, is a lot different now than what it was week 1. Both corners for the Indianapolis Colts that played in that game, one is injured and he's not there anymore. And then the other one got benched for the rookie corner that we drafted this year. And Juju Brents, by all standards, just last week against DeAndre Hopkins, he shut him down, had faced up against him 7 times, only allowed 2 receptions for, I think it was 15 yards, was able to really put the clamps down on DeAndre Hopkins. And even in the Baltimore game, in his first start ever, I think they said he was one of the highest graded defensive players in the entire NFL in his first start. So Juju Brents has definitely been a guy that is very much a guy that can get in the face of any corner or any wide receiver, because, he's 6'2" and has that really long wingspan and can run a 4.3. So, he has all the intangibles to really be, in Calvin Ridley's face. So honestly, I think the Colts might end up doing that a little bit more often this time around versus more of the soft coverage that we saw in week 1. And even with soft coverage, we still saw you guys be able to tear us apart on that. I mean, do you still feel confident in Trevor Lawrence's ability to be able to get past the Colts defense? And, what do you expect going up against new guys in the secondary for the Colts?
Oh, I mean, with Trevor Lawrence, I have like all the confidence in the world in him. I mean, I truly think like he's an elite quarterback, and I think that's what we've been doing wrong these first few games. It's like we're trying to like establish the run to like set up the pass. And it's like, no, like when you look at, the Bills with Josh Allen and these different teams, all of them are starting off, they're throwing. You're going to throw to get a lead, and you want to run to seal the game. And, finally we start airing the ball out a little bit against the Bills. And then next thing you know, the Jaguars, the offensive line has been making many holes, but all of a sudden, since we established the passing game, Travis Etienne gets 2 rushing touchdowns in the fourth quarter. So, I mean, with my thing, I continue to air the ball out because not only do I think Trevor Lawrence is a fantastic quarterback, but I think we have some really good ball catchers, man, with Calvin Ridley, with Evan Ingram, with Zay Jones, with Christian Kirk. We just have a lot of guys that are really good with the ball in their hands. So, I mean, with Trevor Lawrence, I just continue to air it out. He's been pretty good against Gus Bradley defenses the last couple of years. And yeah, I mean, if I'm the Jags, I just let Trevor air it out, put some, and do his thing, because last week, man, he just killed it on third downs. I think he was like 11 of 11 third down conversions out of like 18. It was just an unreal performance out of him. And yeah, I mean, I just keep saying, like, look, you have an elite quarterback, let him cook, and the run game will come because of the threat of the pass game.
Yeah, you mentioned Walker Little potentially being out of this game, did not practice due to knee injury. So my kind of biggest thing, I know like the biggest way to slow down some of those elite quarterbacks is to get pressure on them early and often. And, Trevor, while he can move, not the most mobile guy in the world. So how do you feel about, this Colts defensive line who was missing Kwity Paye a week ago, but he seems to be good to go, was dealing with an injury, but seems like he's back. And the Colts defensive line pretty much at full strength now, with Buckner able to play full 100% last week. How do you feel about this matchup for the Jags offensive line versus this Indianapolis D line that's actually been performing pretty well, all things considered so far?
Yeah, I mean, I worry about it. I mean, in week one, if there was any unit that dominated the Jaguars, it was the Colts defensive line versus the Jaguars offensive line. And, we finally, especially with the interior of the offensive line, it has been very good. Brandon Sheriff got injured against the Colts in week one, but he's now like fully recovered, I guess. Like, he's not on the injury sheet anymore. The second round, the second year center, Luke Fortner, just hasn't been great. And then, the left guard position was bad to the point where the starter got, benched. And then now we're like, okay, Cam Robinson's back. He's at left tackle. Best player's at left guard now. And then now, Walker Little, I don't know if he'll play on Sunday, but all of a sudden he's hurt again. So, the Colts really good on the interior of the defensive line. I continue to do things where I roll out the pocket, where I move Trevor Lawrence around a little bit. I think they want Trevor Lawrence to be like a 3-5 step drop back thrower, but I don't think this offense is kind of allowing him to do that. So, yeah, I mean, I'm doing situations where we're trying to roll out the pocket and just make sure that, the defensive line of the Colts can't just pin their ears back and know where Trevor Lawrence is going to be. So there's ways to kind of mitigate things like that. But, I mean, it could really expose a weakness with the Jaguars when it comes to that matchup.
Yeah, and also with that, you mentioned the running game. Travis Etienne had a really good day against the Buffalo Bills. One of the things that I was kind of curious about, because the Buffalo Bills, they're not a great run defense, and Indianapolis comes in actually pretty good. They were able to do a great job on Derrick Henry a week ago, averaged like I think it was 3.3 yards per carry, something like that. They did a great job whenever they had their line back to pretty much full strength. So how do you view this game with Indianapolis D line, with what they're able to do, especially in the interior? And really, I feel like their front seven's has been really good against the run. How do you think that matchup's going to go for Jacksonville, with Indianapolis having kind of a front that can do that and take away the run if need be?
Yeah, I mean, I just hope that early on we establish the passing game. I mean, I think this is a great opportunity for the Jaguars to go out there and drop back and try to attack the secondary, as opposed to, trying to just stuff ETN with like nowhere to go, really. And that's the name of the game here, man. Just I just wouldn't force feed ETN too much, and get it to ETN maybe on like screenplays or whatever. But yeah, at this moment right now, it feels like the offensive line is like kind of lacking that like intensity and like eagerness to go crush their opponent. And I don't know how well they can just like find that. But yeah, I like I've been saying, man, to set up the passing game to ensure the run game will work well later on.
switching back to the Colts offense here for a second. I mean, Michael Pittman had, I believe it was like 8 catches for like 90 some yards against the Jacksonville Jaguars the first time around. Is there any wide receiver that you look at for the Indianapolis Colts with Michael Pittman, Josh Downs, who just had his best game last week, almost hit 100 yards on the day? Do you have any fear of any of these tight ends or wide receivers for the Indianapolis Colts and their resurgence trying to establish some kind of passing game against your secondary?
Yeah, I mean, I think Michael Pittman's a really good player. Like, I feel like, he if he had a little more consistency at quarterback during his Colts career, I think people would view him as a lot more of like a real premier talent. But just since the quarterback position and the, coaching staff has been so shaky, he hasn't really been able to showcase his true talents. But yeah, I mean, he has these games where he puts up these stats, and then nobody really even talks about him, the week after. So yeah, it would definitely be Michael Pittman because he's just a mismatch against really most cornerbacks in the NFL. And, he can make some good cornerbacks look bad when it comes to, if the ball is placed correctly. So, yeah, I mean, of all the different, playmakers the Colts have, it's definitely, Michael Pittman, I think, is the toughest.
Well, the last thing I want to ask you before we kind of get into score predictions here, looking at your guys' special teams, how are you feeling so far about the Jacksonville special teams? And, do you see an advantage in this game or something you guys do well or potentially a weakness that could be exposed in this game?
Well, the special teams, I mean, they have a really good special teams unit outside of whatever the heck happened in like Houston, where like the fullback returned it for a touchdown. Like we had a field goal block, but McManus just like missed a kick, and yeah, it was just really, really bad that day. But overall, Jamal Agnew is a really good punt returner. McManus is a pretty good NFL kicker, and we have a good punter with like Logan Cook. So with the special teams unit, I don't really worry too much about that. So I think that, with that unit, granted, a bunch of them are pretty highly paid. They're paying Jamal Agnew a lot to be punt returner, and they're paying, giving McManus a good amount of money to, be out here kicking kicks. So, yeah, I like the special teams unit. I'll say that.
Yeah, I definitely think in that game specifically, the first matchup, Jamal Agnew, I think he was with that huge punt return, like that changed that game because that was a tightly contested game. And I think that really like swung the momentum in your favor. So Indianapolis, I think, will definitely have to contain him if they hope to win this game. So just wanted to add that in there. Go ahead, Derek.
Yeah, I was going to say the Colts know a thing or two about the Jacksonville special teams unit from that first one. If the Colts do that again, I swear I'm gonna go find whoever the special teams coordinator is, and I'm gonna ask him what betting line he had on this game because I know it's gonna be because they're doing it on purpose. I know it for a fact. Don't let Agnew catch the dang ball. Just punt it out of bounds, please.
Yeah, and I don't think they were letting them return many that game, and then all of a sudden they gave one to him, and he like returned it pretty well. I remember that game. I was like, man, these guys do not want Agnew returning punts.
Yeah,
I see why
it's bad, but awesome. All right. Well, I guess it is that time for this. The score predictions for this game. UCF Jaguar, we'll let you go first, man. Give us your score prediction for this game coming up.
Yeah, I mean, wait, where's this game being played at?
You know dang well where it's being played at.
I mean, I got to pick the Jaguars to win this one, man. I mean, there's a lot of bad streaks in Jaguars history, and you guys somehow went the whole entire Blake Bortles era without even defeating the Jaguars in Jacksonville.
As if you wouldn't pick them even if they were playing in Indy. So don't try that one.
Yeah, I probably would. I'd probably still pick the Jaguars. I'm high on the Jaguars this year, and I mean, even in Indy, the Jaguars didn't play a very good game and still somehow won by like 10. So I'm gonna do something similar, man. I'll say the Jaguars win 27-17 this game.
All right, Cody, go ahead.
Derek, I seem to remember the one time when the Colts were trying to make it in. Jacksonville is the worst team in the NFL. The Colts just laid an egg. And I remember you saying this, and I'm going to hold true to this. I will not pick the Colts to win in Jacksonville until they win in Jacksonville. So I can't pick the Colts to win as much as I want to believe in it. And I hopefully will be looking like a fool in a couple days here, but I can't pick the Colts. I just can't. I just can't do it, even though I really want to. So I'm probably going to go 24-20. I think it will be a tight game because that first game was as well. But I think ultimately Jacksonville, all that stuff. And also Jacksonville's 0-2 at home, which is kind of interesting. So, but I do think Jacksonville, I think they are on paper.
With the Colts,
Yeah.
Like, except for obviously we won. Obviously we won last week at home, but I mean, going.
What do you mean we're 0-2 at home? We won 2 games in London.
Yeah, right. Yeah. That's right.
I was going to say, do you think that's going to carry over at all? I mean, I know you're playing in Jacksonville, and I know that, like, obviously you're going back to the United States, so it makes it a little bit easier rather than shifting 6 hours ahead of time, rather going back in time. Do you think that has any kind of carryover?
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I mean, it was a weird thing because, like, I don't know if you guys ever been to Europe, but man, it's I went to Spain one time and it was like a 6-hour difference. So like when it's like 11 o'clock over there, your body feels like it's like 5 o'clock. So they got their bodies all adjusted just to come back over, all that during the first like quarter of a football season. I don't know. It's going to be tough, but 2 games in, it's going good. I mean, we'll really figure out. And the Jaguars have a quick turnaround because they go from that to now at home to all of a sudden they're playing in New Orleans this Thursday night for Thursday night football. So, it's a really, really quick turnaround. So I'll be interested to see during that 4-game London to Jacksonville to Thursday night in New Orleans stretch, like what the record turns out to be in that stretch.
It is interesting to me that Jacksonville, after the 2 games in London, I thought they would have a bye week, and it was kind of interesting that they didn't. So that was just kind of a weird thing to me. Like I thought, man, 2 games in London
did not have a bye week. They had the option to take a bye week, but they didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
They wanted it more toward the middle of the season. So
I get that. But at the same time, it's like, I mean, if there's ever a game that Indy could beat Jacksonville in Jacksonville, it's when Jacksonville is acquainted to playing football in the UK. And then sure enough, you end up going all the way back, and it's your first game back in your real home field for the first time in almost a month. So, I mean,
the time to beat the Jaguars in Jacksonville is when you're playing a 2-14 team. You just need a win to get into the playoffs.
And you know what? And that's what I'm saying. And I was going to go there. I'm glad you brought that up because, again, nothing would make me happier than to see Gardner Minshew, where he made a name for himself with you guys, to come into Jacksonville and just take a dump right in the middle of that field on you guys and just smear it all over you and rub your faces in it. I would love for that. But again, Cody reminds me of it every single week almost, where we again saw Indianapolis go into Jacksonville, heavy favorites to win that game. They just had to win, and they just had to do it blatantly. And then sure enough, you had Jacksonville fans showing up like clowns to make fun of your owner, and yet somehow, some way, we let that team destroy us. We let that fan base have that kind of happiness over the fact that they kicked us out of the playoffs. And again, I love what Shane Steichen's done, and I'm grateful for what the Colts are doing right now, but my stance is still the same. I will not pick this team to win in Jacksonville until they finally win in Jacksonville. It's been too many years. It's been nearly a decade. I can't keep falling for the same trap over and over. So I'm gonna be the biggest blunder of everyone in this right here, and I'm probably gonna get trashed for doing it. But I said Jags win 31-17. I'm that non-confident as of this moment. I would love for the Colts to prove me wrong, but until we actually do it, I can't sit here and say I'm confident.
Yeah, I like that score. I'm gonna have them in mine. I'm joking.
There you go, Jags fans. I just gave your boy a reason to switch up his prediction now because the Colts guy said so.
Yeah, Colts guy is having horrific memories, and he's having flashbacks.
Don't even make me relive that, okay? That
PTSD.
That end of that season, that 2021-2022 season, still haunts me in my dreams. That game haunts me.
Yeah, I can imagine.
We
I
were a
imagine it haunts
16 and a
Carson
half
Wentz,
point
too.
favorite, and we lost by 16.
Yeah, probably haunts Carson Wentz the most.
Yeah, just chilling
I
on his
hope
couch,
so.
thinking about it. You think?
Yeah, and his different helmet jersey short
Oh,
combo while he practices.
oh boy. Oh man.
All
I
right.
tell you what,
Well,
man. That is just still like it's just crazy to think of, like, that was only a couple years ago, and now Frank Reich's 0-5. He looks like the worst coach in the league, and Carson Wentz is not even on an NFL team. It's just crazy how that works.
Yeah, I mean, I was surprised Reich on another head coaching job. I thought he was like the perfect OC and not really maybe the best leader, but because I don't know, he just seems like an offensive coordinator personality, but maybe I'm wrong.
well, I'll just say this. I know we're on the last bit here. In some ways, I feel bad for Frank Reich because it's obvious that they drafted the wrong quarterback, and that was the owner's decision, not his. So, of course, the owner shares the majority of the blame for what's going on. But at the same time, I mean, Frank Reich's saying the same thing that we've been hearing. We heard the last 2 seasons, which was, do this, do that. We're climbing the mountain. We're this close. We're not that far away.
Yeah,
I think that the conversations between me and the owner are very instructive. They're very good. No, they're not very good. You're getting chewed out because you don't talk with the owner. The coaches do not talk with the owner mid-season like you unless they're getting their ass chewed out. That's just that's facts.
He talks like Gus Bradley did when he was head coach for us. Just too many phrases and just like way too much coach speak. It's like, dude, like give me something real here,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, don't insult the fans and say we're not that far away when you literally are the worst team in football. Like, stop.
Yeah, I couldn't stand it.
Absolutely. All right. Well, yep, that's going to do it for this one, guys. Again, shout out to UCF Jaguar for hopping on here and doing this with us. Greatly appreciate you as always, my guy. Again, we always say good luck, just not too much luck. We're looking to try to end this streak sooner rather than later. One of these days, we'll be able to have a video where we can say that we actually beat you in your hometown. Let's hope that this time is one of those times. But that's going to do it for this one, ladies and gentlemen. Again, leave us your thoughts on this game. Thank you all so much for tuning in. And as always, guys, go Colts.
Go Jags.